So bringing us all back together, I think we're going to recap what every group did, yes? Like the discussions. So as you all heard, there was a super vocal group of us that really wanted to talk about just rewording the themes. So that's what we did. So we said reworking, it really came out as rewording. So I want to emphasize from the get-go that all of the topics stayed, we just rearranged things a small bit. So this was wordsmithing, yeah.
Do you think you should go last? Yes.
I will do that. They pulled up the slides, so we thought we'd talk. Okay.
I think it might be, yeah.
More sense to go last?
So I think
yeah.
somebody. So is there anybody from theme 1 who would like to speak to what they've been up to?
Can we pull this?
Any volunteers? Or does the online group want to speak to it? Oh, okay. Now we have to go back to the reworking the themes thing now. Okay, go for it.
Well, now that we've whetted your appetite, yeah. So had a lovely visual picture for states, rates, and fates. So this is what we think we turned. Let's see if I can. How do I go to the next slide? There we go. Okay. So this is our hope is this is wordsmithing the themes. So theme 1 is states, mapping key metabolisms over space and time. Theme 2 is rates, mechanisms connecting microbial metabolisms to biogeochemical cycles. And theme 3 is fates, predicting interactions with environmental change. Right, woo, we've done it. Okay, these were our subheaders, and one of the key things we tried to identify was deliverables. So like, what does this look like, mapping the state of metabolism? So the deliverable hope would be 4D, and this is where that microbial interactions in the 4D was really this overarching thing. 4 maps of key microbes and metabolisms and their drivers. For theme 2, the key deliverable is a conceptual framework for how microbial ecology regulates biogeochemical cycles, and the other way around. It's always the chicken and the egg. We're working on the wordsmithing there. And for theme 3, fates and predictions, key deliverable is risk and vulnerability assessment for key metabolisms. So, and the other words in here, these were just us kind of coalescing things. So in the end, though, then we looked at topics, right? So this is what everybody's been working on filling this out. So we looked at the new wording of the themes and if anything needed to move. Theme 2, we just kept in its entirety, and we moved the controls on microbial productivity and metabolism. We decided now fits better in theme 2. So that we just moved straight over there. So this is our proposed theme 2 topics. And theme 3, similarly, like we kept everything that was there. We thought that converting currencies from omics to biogeochemistry maybe moves into implementation, which I should back up and say we felt like implementation is very much its own section, and these themes are the separate things. So there's kind of overarching things in implementation. This is all obviously very much in process, so that's where we're at with that right now. Theme 1 was the only one where when we kind of looked at what was there and reorganized it a bit into the topic 1 within theme 1 stuck, and then we added in a few more words. So it's now the biogeography of microbial populations, metabolisms, and connecting trophic levels throughout the ocean, and then making those places, expanding that list a little bit. So keeping that coastal dynamics and the mesopelagic, making deep its own thing, and realizing that we need to make a category for the open ocean euphotic zone. So that was what the rewording, restructuring, that's where we ended up. But the hope really, again, is that our expectation is that everything that people have built in our beautiful 30-something page science plan has it's just a drag and drop underneath slightly new theme terms. Feedback on that? Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Hillary Close, University of Miami. Hey, Kim. So I guess just thinking about the purpose of the planning document, it's something that potentially people might be pointing to in the future when they propose a study to their funding agency. And I'm just a little worried about studies that are really, really appropriate for biogeoscapes, but can't fit neatly into one of the themes. I guess personally, the one that I was looking at is like a lot of what I do falls under mechanisms, but not rates. Like I study mechanisms, but I don't characterize rates. So is that going to be a problem for trying to demonstrate how, you know, any individual study fits into the targets?
That's a really good point. And that was something we were trying to, so yeah, a group that was something we talked about, is like making sure that we're not, that we haven't lost anything with this restructuring. So yeah, Chris, I really didn't introduce myself for recording purposes. I'm Kim Poppendorf, also from the University of Miami. Sit down the hall from Hillary. Yeah. And I think Kristen has it. Yeah, love to hear other qualms.
I also agree with the sentiment that the purpose of often mapping microbial metabolism and things like that is not necessarily to come up with a rate, but is to come up with processes and things like that. And there is always the question whether microbes alone control the rates. So, you know, and often it's the substrate or the environmental factors that control the rates. So in my mind, the work I do, I'm trying to understand pathways, mechanisms, as the other speaker said, and that's why I'm interested in microbes and how these things could change the future. In turn, these changes lead to changes in what kind of byproducts that system leaves, for example, N2O, for example, and so on. So there's a lot more than rates to all these things, and rates kind of narrows that down too much, in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm hearing this. So the mechanisms and connections, a lot of people map onto, but not the rates. A lot of people identify with. Yeah.
Kristen Buck, Oregon State. So I can kind of envision, as we talk about this, that is maybe rates and mechanisms, and then connecting microbial metabolisms to biogeochemical cycles as an option. In the little like diagram that we did, the goal of that second one is identifying the gears, right, that lead to changes in that biogeography and in these cycles. And so I think absolutely that can be pathways and not just how, we talked about what the gears are, but also how fast they're moving. So maybe that's both.
Yeah, so it should be broader.
Yes, yes.
Hi, it's Alessandro. Roger, I think lots of things fit under that topic. We don't need to, I think, add them all to the title of the theme. So it becomes rates and this and substrates and this and this. I think, as Christian said, it's all about the link between the microbial activity and the elemental cycles. And of course, those elemental cycles are also driven by how the substrates, the amount of nitrogen gets into the ocean, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that fits in the sort of granularity of the science that is contributing to this, right? I don't think we want to be really adding extra words, because then everyone else in the room will say, I need my word on there as well. And then before you know it, we're back at a sentence that has 25 words in it.
Hey, Roger.
Yeah, it's blinking. That is not my intention, is to add every word there, but to come up, if possible, to come up with words that are much broader in meaning.
Do you think rates and mechanisms is too specific?
No, the way it's written is rates first. Yeah, probably something like that would be much more.
Okay, I have a comment online, and I was going to invite Kathy Barbeau to unmute and share. She's concerned about overlap between themes 1 and 2.
Oh, sorry. This is a difficult problem. I guess I just think that you can potentially start running into more overlap issues with having metabolisms so prominent in both 1 and 2. But I guess nobody just wants to look at who's there in the biogeography without thinking about what they're capable of doing. So I don't really have a solution, and I think that this is a good process, but I'm just, we had a real overlap problem before that Allison pointed out. And we just want to be careful that we don't do that to ourselves again. I certainly agree with the expanding from just rates to rates and mechanisms, because we have a lot more mechanisms than we have rates. So if we all have to have a rate, it's going to eliminate a lot of us. So, okay, I'll shut up now.
Ben, go ahead.
Thanks, Ben Twining. Thanks, Kathy, for that comment. My response is that this helps differentiate us from like Terra, that I think of Terra as being a big global program that looked at just the who. I mean, they did more than that, but that was a big part of that. I don't know if anyone agrees with that, but that's, to me, that's why I think it's important to get metabolisms in there.
Oh, wow, okay. Eric Webb, USC, and I want to agree with Kathy, having metabolism in there twice is a little confusing, but really one is predicted metabolisms, and I think that in theme 2, it's trying to actually translate that into actual function, like a mechanism, a rate, and with that difference, then I think it's not redundant, actually.
Predict it on for theme 1, yeah.
Any more comments? Al.
Can you go back to the beautiful artwork? Because I think it's important to think, even the slide before, just to see it in all its glory. We were thinking about really trying to connect these different kinds of products that people and users of the biogeoscapes knowledge may have need for. You know, stakeholders want to understand how key metabolisms are distributed over the ocean, how they're regulated. That could be at the scale of the basin, the globe, or even a stakeholder who wants to understand what's going on in their adjacent seas around their community, because they have responsibilities for, I don't know, regulating fisheries or things like that. And then this gears idea was really about then trying to say, okay, how, what's driving these metabolisms and driving their coupling to elemental cycling, which is why I think all these things, mechanisms, and they're all in there, right? Because they are the ways in which the metabolisms couple to the elemental cycles. And then in the last part, we really thought about trying to think very broadly about how we can communicate the risks that these metabolisms are at. And those metabolisms or, things could be, anything that you're interested in. It might be the net primary production, it might be the volume of suboxic water, the presence of a harmful algal bloom, the biological carbon pump, but somehow how we connect that to global change and how we use this knowledge to communicate the vulnerabilities of those key services to global change, because that then also provides us with a benchmark to show how we add other anthropogenic activity, overfishing, carbon dioxide removal strategies, how that modifies the risk and vulnerability. And I think that's a really cool way of communicating all the knowledge, aggregating and communicating all the knowledge we have that cuts across both predicted models, but also expert knowledge, new findings, et cetera, So I think that's all I'd like. It's more of a comment than a question, but this is really a big part of the discussion we had in coming to this point. Thanks.
We move on to this. Yeah.
Oh, the wrench. Yeah, the wrench is kind of like the human intervention in the system. And of course, the wrench might be there for nefarious purposes. It may be there for beneficial purposes, but it illustrates the fact that we have a role to play as a society in this aspect.
Yeah.
We're not just Carly Buckle, artist here for our figure. So.
Yeah, we're not just the observers, we're participants in the whole thing. So we're part of it. So we have to put ourselves in that picture as well. Right, so I think we can, if there's no more comments, we can move on.
You have comments The thing that didn't make it on these slides was that we kind of pulled out the implementation subtopic. You mentioned it, but we're working on adding that in. And so, again, hopefully that will just pull down from below.
Great, thank you. So, is there do the individual themes that we're talking amongst, and you want to say anything about what you were doing? Give us a summary of how you've populated. I've seen there's loads of work that's gone into the document under all the objectives, and there's been a lot of work, which is really amazing and fantastic, and will help to, build the science plan going forward. Has anybody got any input from the individual themes that they want to bring up at this time? Online. There's somebody. Or online. Yeah. So anybody who's online or anybody in person.
So in our theme, we did theme 3, and we actually got rid of some topics, combined topics, and yeah. So we thought there was redundancy in some of the topics. For theme 3.
So theme 3 got rid of some topics.
Well, we just reorganized.
Okay.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and do you think that still fits under this?
Oh yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Do you agree? Theme 3? Yeah, it totally fits.
And we hi Federico, we have shortened the title as well, right? The title of the theme to make it more digestible.
Hi, Ariana Carinos. I was just going to comment on that also, that the way that we reduced it really closely followed the states rates model, where we really changed the first topic to focus on the capacity that's already present. Then we had a topic that was about focusing on potential changes in mechanism, and then the modeling and integration. So that was really where we focused a lot of our discussion. But yeah, just that it fit well with that paradigm.
It might be helpful if we have someone just come up from theme 3 who sat in that discussion, just walk us through what you did, just to make sure we're all on the same page rather than people sharing bits and pieces of what happened. I'd like to do that for all 3 themes, just so we can all see where we are at this point in time.
Okay, so here's what we decided. Hi, can you hear me well? Here you can see what we decided to shorten. I mean, even if later this shows up in the different topics. And from the topics, well, we probably several of you had the same. You start realizing there are overlaps between other themes and other topics. So we tried to, as far as we could, differentiate them from other topics. And well, here we decided for now to focus on what is the relationship between the biological diversity and the ecosystem functioning or functions in the face of global change and probably extinction and concurrent multiple stresses. Well, and I think for this first topic, we stayed for a while and we tried to work on every subtopic, but then we started to accelerate and focus on the objectives. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we changed a little bit the order. We have topic 3.2 for the mechanisms of microbial adjustment and adaptation to global change, and here we understood more at a cellular level. We discussed about the terms adjustment, acclimation, adaptation, evolution. So the discussion, I guess, is still open. If anybody wants to add, please do.
Federico, can you just read the objectives of each?
Okay.
Or maybe this one, or?
So for this one, we said to determine the tipping points and environmental drivers for microbial survival, to determine adaptation and acclimation mechanisms in response to different stresses across taxa, to quantify the rate of adaptive evolutionary processes, and to identify key priorities towards developing adaptive models at the global scale. Then 3.3 was more into detecting and attributing change. Attributing change can have some overlap with the previous one, and detecting. We thought more of a long time series, allowing to detect or not changes in phase of global change. Objectives that we wrote for now are evaluate long-term time series data to determine variability in microbial communities and biogeochemical processes, identify biogeochemical and microbial indicators. This was, we stayed here for a while, and this could be understood as proxies of complex systems that are more sensitive to global change, to monitor that global change pressure, and different spatial scales should be considered. And then develop new methods for estimating in situ states of microbial communities. I don't remember that discussion. But 3.4, key gaps in the modeling of marine microbes, physiology, adaptation, and evolution. We didn't discuss much about this one, but we had one of our members that while we were discussing previous topics, he was working hard on this, so I will read the objectives. We did work together on the objectives. Identify the spatial temporal variability of key physiologies interactions, including their environmental drivers. Quantify key physiological rates across spatial and temporal gradients. Deliver new and improved theory parameterizations for models, and merging biogeochemical and population modeling. This was a good discussion that we had at the end, right, by Damien. About the subject, I'm not an expert at all, but models come from either from the biogeochemistry side or from the microbial side, or ecology and evolution, and they usually don't usually work together, and that's a nice gap and challenge ahead. And finally, 3.6. I don't know what happened here, but
you want me to speak up?
Yeah, I don't remember what happened here.
So this is one of the topics that we felt that should be incorporated in two different places. So we felt that part of it should go in the implementation strategy of 3.4, like the models, like to go from omics to rate to model, that should go into the models. And then parts of this should go into topic 3.2 as well. So, but we ran out of time.
Okay. Good.
Great. Any questions or comments?
Thanks. Lois Menian, Brest University. I see lots of overlap with our discussion in theme 1, especially regarding the distribution and dynamics of microbes, functions, adaptations, evolution. And the way now it's framed in theme 1 is really a catalog. So, and might be a bit boring. I don't know who wants to invest time in cataloging diversity. So maybe there is a bit of reworking to do there, and maybe focus theme 3 more in the modeling or predictive parts. And
detection of change in the
I mean, while doing the catalog, we will also do the detection of change in gene contents, in microbial community structures, and all these things, and we can even adopt a space for time approach to try to understand how it will change based on what we currently see. So a suggestion is to bring a few more topics in the theme 1 and to make it less descriptive, and maybe focus theme 3 on more predictive tools. Suggestion.
Great. Yeah.
My 2 cents.
Other comments? Okay. Yeah. So this last comment, and then we'll move on to theme 2.
Okay. Hi. Okay. Just want to make a few comments about our understanding of change up there. One of them is macronutrients. Macronutrients, there's micronutrients, no macronutrients. It's just a very simple thing. And also a bit more emphasis on redox changes in the ocean because deoxygenation, and that has a big impact on microbial processes. It would be nice to have those too.
True. That's not well reflected. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so somebody from theme 2?
Muriel from the University of Copenhagen. So I was in theme 2. I don't think we had any like really complicated in-depth discussions. So we focused more on kind of, so the objectives were mostly phrased as research questions, and we mostly focused on phrasing them into kind of this objectives with this like objectives words. So yeah, so the theme is quantify the cumulative influence of microbial processes on key biogeochemical cycles and their sensitivity to change. And in the end, we also looked at kind of this preliminary new structure, I guess that it's now a bit different and how it would fit in there. And one thing we also thought like kind of that this sensitivity change was relevant to all of the topics in theme 2 and was always kind of like separate. So we talked about if that would fit in the new structure. We had like the macronutrient cycles and microbes. So the objectives now are quantify both inorganic and organic macronutrient transformation processes and fluxes, identify key microbial players as sources and sinks and transformers, quantify and predict the sensitivity to change of the above. And I guess the thing for micronutrient is relatively similar. And I think Alison had made a comment on if we should merge macro and micronutrients as well. So we discussed that, and I think in terms of the objective, it's very similar, but then of course the kind of state of the art is a bit different. So maybe it could be one topic, but then like have two like two paragraphs on like the background and current state. Yes, and we also talked a bit about the implementation, that it can like some of this, of course, across topics, and some was more specific maybe to certain topics. So then the micronutrient cycles and microbes. So people added information on the background. Yeah, so you can see the first objectives are basically the same, but then we also have like identify and constrain interactive effects between micronutrients. I guess the microplastic thing is new now. Yeah, and also I guess something like co-limitations. And then topic 3 in theme 2 was connecting global ocean oxygen distributions to microbial activity. And I think there are some very specific objectives as well. And we felt that generally this topic was not so well connected within the other topics of theme 2. It's kind of a bit like separate. Yeah, so one of the more specific questions, I think Alison had put it in, was like identify tipping points in oxygen that fundamentally change the biogeochemistry of the system. But otherwise, we also had like quantify changes in oxygen impact microbe-mediated carbon, macro and micronutrient fluxes. And yeah, so then some are like more specific. And then topic 4 was connecting organic geochemistry to biological processes. And for this, yeah, there's also some broader objectives and some maybe more specific objectives. And we also discussed a bit, I guess it's a bit different now, kind of bioavailability and reactivity and differences in that. And something we generally were not sure if like kind of the objectives should be really broad and kind of long, or is it better to actually have really short and kind of more like easily digestible objectives. But I think it also goes back to the question kind of who's the audience reading this document. So we have like characterize how the structure of microbial communities influences the composition, reactivity, and physical phase of organic matter. And we try to generally phrase objectives kind of that it would be microbes and biochemistry vice versa, kind of like the chicken and egg scenario. So we try to have like more structure or relationship rather than implying direction in the relationship. Yes, and then the last part was biogeochemically important enzymatic processes. Yeah, so then we also wanted to identify and quantify key supergroups of enzymes in environmentally relevant processes and quantify impacts on global budgets, validate gene annotations. We had data mining and also assessed response in enzyme rates to changing environmental conditions. But yeah, the kind of changing environmental conditions is kind of always the last objective. So I think it would go really well in kind of this new suggested structure. Yeah, I think this was mostly what we discussed. Yeah, and then there's modeling microbial and biogeochemical conditions. And this focused more on kind of integrating omics, physiology, and rates in the models. I mean, that's, I guess, what also theme 3 just mentioned. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else from the group wants to pitch in.
Okay, so we were in theme 1. I think we're going to echo what a lot of the other themes were saying. Like, so we just sort of understood the assignment. We worked through what the objectives that were already there, but we agree, I think, in general, that interesting to think about how to reorganize them and collapse some of them together. So we're in sort of biogeography of marine microbial populations. We talked about how to phrase that the best. So 1.1, the subtopic is, okay, the topic is the biogeography. And we talked about, we did spend some time talking about how to define microbial and what biogeoscape should encompass with microbial. And we talked about this idea of ecological or biogeochemical units and new ways or comparing ways to identify those units. We also discussed the controls on that microbial biogeography and discussed the extent to which we want to work with what we have right now is what biomarkers or proxies exist and consolidate those, while also developing pipelines for creating and identifying new biomarkers or proxies. So we spent some time discussing that as well. I think the text captures that. And then we have this 4D ocean perspective, specifically more related to the biogeography and temporal spatial scales. Yeah, interactions. So this is more specifically about interactions. We talked about building capacity to actually track microbial interactions. We discussed that there's a lot of tools available, but it's very difficult for many labs to access those tools. And then we discussed maybe there's some key interactions or rates that we want to consistently be measuring, and how can we identify those interactions. Then we have coastal dynamics and complexities, where we discussed, I think one of the most interesting sort of things that came out at the end of that whole discussion was this idea of using the coastal systems to help improve our ability to predict aspects of future change, since they're under rapid change. So we discussed, yeah, basically how to leverage the coastal ocean also for a wider global perspective. And then we had lots of discussion about the mesoplastic and deep oceans, and you'll see we got into a fire voting situation. So Allison brought up the really important point early on that this applies also to the coastal oceans. Do we want to start thinking about separating those biogeographies, or thinking more closely about how to draw connectivity among them? So should all of the objectives that we have listed in coastal oceans and mesoplastic and deep oceans just be distributed across the different topics? Which it sounds like with the proposed new structure, we're going more towards sort of binning the ocean into bins. Our group felt that maybe that wasn't the right direction. So there's that. We voted on it with fire. But we still feel strongly that there are some key objectives related specifically to those ecosystems, and we listed some of those, particularly our ability to, in the future, identify impacts of new anthropogenic inputs into these deep ocean systems. What do we need to measure now in order to be able to do that and quantify that? And then lastly, we had observing and connecting the trophic levels and understanding interactions, which is related also to the interactions in 4D. But we discussed a lot about really just tracking where these different interactions are occurring and trying to get more quantitative about that.
and in particular, quantifying the relationship between nutrients and trophic level transfer. Can we draw that connection in a very explicit way? And we also discussed bringing in some aspects of the socioeconomic factors or fisheries. How do we actually connect the biogeoscapes work out to those levels? Also fire for collapsing things.
So you said you thought that we were going towards binning the ocean. I don't think we were. Can you explain?
So what discussion that was in our group, and maybe other people can jump in, please, especially Allison, if you're still online, because this was originally the point she raised, was that if you start, just putting the mesoplastic in deep ocean, for instance, in one objective, maybe that's not the way we should go. Maybe we should include aspects of the mesoplastic in deep ocean and all of the other objectives that we're interested in.
Yeah, I agree. You were suggesting that our new structure moves us towards binning rather than towards this integrative approach. Can you explain why you think it does that?
Yeah, that might be a mischaracterization on my part. I was just thinking for the states, specifically for like theme 1, in the context of theme 1, it looks like we want to characterize the states, and then we were going to characterize them as like A, coastal, B, open, C, mesopelagic.
No, just broadly, what is the state of the ocean? And I think it makes sense to ask that in the context of a connected coastal to open, surface to deep. So I think we're still good.
Okay, so I think the group would agree with that, right? So, okay.
Thank you. Kai Ziervogel, University of New Hampshire. I was also part of that group, and I want to point out that we discussed the anthropogenic impacts that were added to the list, and that could, like HAPS and OA and so on. So when I saw, the other group was discussing microplastics. This could actually be tricky in this country to get funding from NSF. So we pointed that out, and we may want to be, we just want to keep it, in the back of our heads that we may, not emphasize it too much, I guess.
So you're suggesting sticking to basic science rather than too much looking at impact?
Yeah, if you want to get NSF funding, the answer would be yes.
Yes, please.
I think that you're correct in the sense that we want to focus on basic science, but sometimes you may have questions that have societal implications that require that basic science knowledge. So it's all the way that you frame it. If you frame it as something that it will be, practical outcome, probably we will not. My understanding is that you should frame it from a basic science question that would advance the knowledge that is required for that. From that perspective, I would say there is no complication. Make sense? Yes. Okay, thank you.
And I could just add a comment to that I think, if we were to suggest a pan-European project that would fit under the Biodioscapes framework, then we would have to have some of these issues in there because that's what they fund. They don't, the basic fund is national. These more society implications are funded at the EU level. So if we wanted to go for an EU, so I think it's good that we have the flexibility in there for both approaches. Any other comments on theme 1? So the other thing that came to my mind was thinking about the states, of course, and the comments that were made about, whether mechanisms fit under rates, is that maybe mechanisms actually fit under states rather than rates. And we're not just talking about the states. No, there's some shaking heads. Okay, forget that. But I would just say that, it's not just about states of the ocean, but also states of metabolisms or things like that. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to say. So, yeah, I get to say thank you, but this is thank you on everybody's behalf. I think it's been an amazingly stimulating meeting. I think we've really made progress. We've got lots of text to synthesize and to take forward into developing the science plan. We've brought the community together. We've done lots of community interaction. everything. So it's been a fantastic meeting, I think, and I'd like to thank, on behalf of everybody, I'd like to thank everybody on behalf of everybody else. So we have a 33-page outline for the science plan. We have a concept. We've fleshed out the topics. We've populated objectives. We've discussed the theme concepts, and we've identified some key overarching deliverables as well, which I think puts us in a really good position going forward. And so, of course, we now have taken, through this process, we've taken the National Bioscapes reports on board. We've discussed lots of things through this workshop. We've looked at related program reports, and now we need volunteers to actually write the science plan. So, please look at that form and volunteer, and going forward, we'll be in touch. That's correct, isn't it? Yeah. That would be great. And of course, when we write the science plan, then we can start to think about what we're actually going to do in the field and the science that we're going to do under biogeoscapes. And that brings us on to thinking about what activities that your nation can contribute to. So what is the potential for future research expeditions and sampling opportunities as we go back to our individual nations? The national coordinators that are here can start thinking about national meetings to share the science plan with our communities in our own countries, start identifying funding routes, and asking what are the broad science questions that we're going to be, or the specific science questions actually that we're going to be asking within our in our national communities, and also to ask about what infrastructure development we might need. More connecting with colleagues, so keep reaching out, keep bringing people in to make this really inclusive. If there's people that aren't here who you think ought to be here for future workshops, then please, start tapping their shoulder and saying, hey, I think it'd be really great if you got involved. And if it works in your country, start communicating with funding agencies as well. We've heard a lot of feedback this week from people about different aspects of the program, and we just wanted to take this opportunity to say that we heard you. The particular things that came up were about the best practice guide or cookbook, and also intercalibration, how that connects with intercalibration. We need an organic geochemist to put on our organising committee so that field is represented properly. We need to clarify our overarching goal, and there were also questions coming up about how to implement at the global scale. So there was also an idea that was actually originally brought up in 2018 about developing core centres and or training and capacity building, and how we might facilitate those things. And then, of course, we want to keep momentum going. So in order to keep momentum going, then we want to create this collaborative, or we're creating this collaborative network. Do you guys want to comment on this?
I think we like the idea. We're not sure what platform to use yet. Slack may be too many people for Slack, and Slack seems to be evolving a bit, at least within our institution. So we're going to think about it, but we're not sure yet. We certainly have our Twitter platform, which is public facing though. I'm still calling it Twitter. Maybe we all need to move to Blue Sky though.
Yeah.
But no, I think this is a great topic. Emails, Slack, public social media, we can figure it out. Suggestions welcome too.
So if anybody's got any ideas about how to continue and maintain collaborative actions, then please, drop us a line.
I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention that we took a risky gamble of submitting a request for a town hall at Ocean Sciences in February on the basis of the fact we would be productive at this meeting. I think we have been productive at this meeting, so I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. And And also maybe if you're interested in helping to deliver that town hall, put your name forward and we can get you involved. I think we've got great ideas to communicate from the discussions we had at the meeting. We can highlight the new Biogeoscapes Fellows at this meeting. We can also promote the new working group. So I think there's lots that we can showcase to the global ocean sciences community about what we're doing. So it's a great opportunity for us to be brave and socialize our ideas. And in doing so, we'll get those ideas stress tested a little bit by other communities, which will only be good for us. And we'll also identify new partners and new linkages. So look out for the town hall.
And also to add on to that, perhaps, you know, don't be shy to put in session proposals, which are biogeoscapes related to international conferences like Ocean Science or ASLO, because, you know, the more, these can really, you know, we've had a lot of submissions of abstracts in the past, and we've seen how it's changed as well from, you know, one year to the next, as the kind of overall theme has broadened out and things. So yeah, don't be proactive in that regard as well.
Camille,
I'd say no one needs any permission.
No, that's
to do
right.
this.
You don't need permission
just go
to do
ahead
that.
and do it.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah. Well, we try. I think we don't have that many sessions submitted at this year's Ocean Sciences, and I suspect that was because maybe there was an expectation that there would be some coordination, organization of that, and it kind of didn't happen. So maybe it's just better to let OSM deal with the overlap issues and not us try to vet that across this community, because I think that just slows down the process. So I just encourage you to self-declare as an ambassador, to show leadership. If you want to be a leader in this program, just do it, right?
That was partly my fault. I was at sea, but we're happy to have people contribute and move forward on these. You know, let us know, or we can voluntold people too for future sessions.
Great. So going forward, the next activities within ExcelNet are more workshops. So that's workshops on informatics and data management, intercalibration, review and assessment, and modeling integration. We're also thinking about summer schools, and of course there's a Biogeoscapes Fellows program, which is just starting off, and we're really excited about all the fellows who are in this program, and they're really excited about the program, and it looks like it's going to be really fun. Going on from that, there's lots of things for people to volunteer for. So we need Biogeoscapes champions. So there's your QR code. Sign up to these different activities: modeling integration workshop, standardization, intercalibration, informatics and data management, the education and capacity building part of the program as well, but also, you know, the science plan writing. So I'm going to leave that up there because I think that's the last slide. Oh, there's one more. Sorry, I'll put that back up afterwards. So there's a round of applause. Thank you. But thank you, everybody. That's fantastic.